Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nerdcast. We're going to pick our field of 64 in podcast form. I'm here with Aaron Fitt and Kendall Rogers, and we're going to agree on everything for this next, I don't know, 67 minutes. And go through. This is the field as we're projecting to Memorial Day. All the results are in. We're going to look at RPI. We're going to look at conference finish. We're going to look at all of these great things, put them in a big pot of gumbo and figure out what we like and what we don't. So I think for me, as we kind of take the lid off this, the RPI, it's May now. The RPI is starting to stabilize. It's not nearly as volatile as it's been in some of our other fields. And for me personally, I'm going to start putting a little more credence to it. Okay. And I think there's no better place to start with our national seeds, guys, because for me, my top 8, I'll just tell you, are within the top 9 of the RPI right now. So we can argue about the sequence of those, but that's kind of where I am. And if you look back at the committee history, a lot of times it's that way, right? Where your national seeds are potentially your top 16 are within those top 17, 18 spots in the RPI.
Yeah. That's a good preamble there, Mark.
That was a great lead in.
Yeah.
So let's look at the very top. I mean, LSU certainly hasn't done anything to make you lose any credibility about their club. I think that they're going to finish strong with the schedule that they have ahead of them. It's not as challenging as some of the other contenders we're going to talk about. And for me, they're still number one, and I don't have any doubt that they're going to remain that way.
I agree. I mean, since we said that the schedule opened up for them, they've swept a series at Ole Miss and they swept a series at home against Alabama. So they're exactly taking care of business like we expected. Now, all of a sudden, you're 15-5 in the league. And so people who are like, hey, wait a minute, why is this team, number one everywhere, or they're, not even first place in their division and all this stuff? Well, now that they're 15-5, they're a game and a half up on Arkansas. It's the right choice. LSU, and I think I still have Wake Forest at number 2.
I do too. Yeah, those are your top 2 right now.
Yep.
So then after that, I'm going back to Vandy.
Yeah,
at number 3. They do have the head-to-head over South Carolina, and those are my next 2.
Yeah, I agree. The head-to-head, they're ahead of South Carolina in the standings, and they. There's something else. They've won fewer series loss than Southland also.
Yeah.
So,
well, how about Vander? How about the fact that Vandy, has 18 wins? They have the most wins against top 50 RPI teams as well.
Yeah, that's pretty loud.
That's impressive.
Only one more than South Carolina though, 17-7 versus.
Yeah, they're very comparable.
Very comparable. But yeah, I agree. I would have Vandy 3, South Carolina 4. Go ahead, Mark.
South Carolina's just got to get healthy. I mean, they were a mass unit this weekend. Once they get as close to full speed as they're going to get, which they may get all the way there, then they're a different club than they were last weekend. Auburn, fortunately for them, caught them at a good time for the Tigers and not so good time for the Gamecocks. And as we'll get towards the bottom of the field, I think that's going to matter for Auburn. And it's so much of this is when you play people. And South Carolina just caught a rough break. Cost them 1 spot in our field this week that they'll have an opportunity to make up as we continue.
Yep, agreed. Remaining schedule not easy for South Carolina, at Kentucky, at Arkansas versus Tennessee, but I think they're good enough to do fine against that stretch. Mm-hmm. I think I'm with you there. So let's move on to number 5. Who do you got here, Mark?
I've got Arkansas.
Yeah, still the Hogs. They just keep on finding ways to win. They were number 5 last week as well for us this exercise. And I don't see any reason to change it. They just keep on winning, guys. It's amazing. All the injuries, here they are, 14-7 and number 5 in the RPI, and check all the boxes.
Yeah, really playing well.
Yeah,
I think after that, I'm looking at my next 3 teams, and we can talk about the order. Would be Coastal, would be Florida, and would be Duke. those would be my next three.
I think I'm with you there as well. Duke now number 8 in the RPI. How about that? And leading their division in the ACC Coastal. They're at 14-9 in the league with a 14-8 top 50. Like all of a sudden, after winning that road series at UVA, they're top 8. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. They're I don't know what the hosting situation is, but because the DBAP, as we talked about on yesterday's show, is occupied for regionals, but we'll find out about that. In fact, I meant to inquire about that today. But yeah, they're one of these three. Go ahead, Kendall.
Well, I was going to throw Stanford in the mix. Here's the thing about Stanford: the RPI sitting at 19 right now. But last night on the main podcast, Joe made the good point. We were talking about A&M last year, with an RPI around like 18 or 19.
22.
Yeah, 22, and they were a top 8 seed. And Joe made the great point that when you look at A&M's resume last year, they top 8 national seed. One of the reasons why they were a top 8 is because they had something beyond those metrics, right? They had an SEC Western Division title. And when you look at Stanford, they might only be 19 in the RPI, but they're probably going to win the Pac-12. So you could look at Stanford as one of those teams like, hey, what, the RPI may not be 9 or may not be 8, but what they do have is a 19 RPI, and they won a power one of the top 3 conferences or top 4 conferences in college baseball.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think the question is when you don't have the RPI, you absolutely you have to have something else, and it's just a question of, does it offset it enough? Okay, do you have enough quality wins? Do you have, did you go on the road and do something? What's your non-conference strength of schedule? All those kinds of things, and I think Stanford's fine there. The other thing is just comparing that against your contenders. Do you bump Florida as a 5th SEC team in favor of having the Pac-12 champion? That's kind of a committee thing to do. Yeah. And I do think that's something to watch. If Stanford continues to put themselves in position to not only win the league, but do so impressively, I do think it's important to finish well. You don't want to back into a title and think that you're going to be rewarded for it. So you need to play well down the stretch, and we'll see what they do. And Aaron, I mean, you saw them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm buying. I mean, it feels like it's coming together for them at the right time. In the bullpen in particular, that had been a kind of a bugaboo for them. But now all of a sudden you got Ryan Bruno and Drew Dowd pitching really well at a great time. And I think it's a great sign. And they're in first place in the pack. And I do believe they will finish strong. I mean, I think I do like the idea of them very much in this mix now that they're leading the league. And you'd love the RPI to be a little higher, but I kind of like the position they're in, 15-6 in the pack, remaining series left at ASU, obviously huge. And then versus Arizona at Washington State. I think they're good enough to win all those series, but obviously at Arizona State is kind of make or break for their top 8 chances. I would think. Where does this leave us? I mean, as far as so Coastal, Duke, Florida, Stanford, we've got 4 teams for 3 spots.
Yeah. Do you feel Coastal has the staying power to stay? Yeah, because the RPI probably needs to be higher. They just don't have the other things that some of these other clubs do.
And currently it's still number 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is good enough. Now let's take a look at our good friend, the RPI needs report, shall we?
Yeah.
To finish inside the top 8, they need to win out. To finish in the top 16, they need to win 9 or 10 out of their last 14. So,
they have App State, South Alabama on the road, who's playing well. I think they won 5 straight conference weekends, and Marshall. So,
plus important midweeks against Charlotte, Clemson, North Carolina.
Yeah, definitely good to point that out. But App State and Marshall, and really South Alabama, aren't going to help your RPI. Right. You may get wins, but it would really be I believe in you. You want a really good league this year. Probably for me, I mean, I might put Stanford in there ahead of them at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. What about the Gators? Should we examine the Gators? I mean, they 14-7 in the SEC with a number 9 RPI. I mean, it's just kind of a steady, as she goes kind of a case here.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say if we look at intra-conference, strength of schedule has not been strong for an SEC team. So if you compare them to that, and that's really why I have them 5th out of that group, then that's not their fault. That's just the way the schedule fell. But I do think that if they finish strong, because they do have a challenging, they host Vandy. That's going to be enormous. They go to A&M this weekend, and they also have Kentucky at the end. And those are chances to not only keep your RPI in good shape, but also kind of boost that intra-conference strength of schedule that's become important. You could also lose those games because those are all challenging.
Very true. Kendall, what's your take here on the Gators?
I actually kind of think when you look at them in Arkansas, I think it's hard to not have Florida but have Arkansas in. And when they're very close in a lot of metrics, extremely close.
Yeah, they are. I think the difference is, Arkansas's series loss. Georgia is not as good, but going to LSU was, that's not a bad loss, right? On the road at LSU. With Florida, they got swept at South Carolina, and then what else? Right, during these next few weeks, what wart is going to pop up? Because they're probably not going to win all 3 of these series. So it's just a question of where you're going to fall. Where Arkansas, they also finished strong. They've got Vandy and they have South Carolina those last 2 weeks. So
Vandy
I think you're going to see some carnage.
Yep,
right, with both of these teams.
It is worth mentioning that Florida is 8-4 on the road, and Arkansas is 3-7 on the road.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are you making the case for Florida ahead of Arkansas?
No, I'm just healthier. That's for sure.
I'm just comparing the 2 teams. I just think the margin between those 2 teams is razor thin.
Yep. Yeah, we could just put them back to back if you want. Arkansas, Florida, Duke, and Stanford.
Yeah, you can do that. I think the other thing, just to point out on Arkansas, and we can drop them, is they're going to get some guys back who've been missing. So they've been kind of limping along, just doing the best they can. And they're over these next 2 to 3 weeks, by the time the games start to really matter, you get into the conference tournament and postseason, they're going to be back to full strength. And that's going to be a different team than the one we see right now.
I'm going to add in here, guys, as we go through this. I did hear back from Coach Pollard at Duke just now. He says their plan is to put in a bid to host at Coombs on campus, the on-campus facility over there, Coombs Field. And so, hey, we didn't think Maryland would be able to host it at the Bob Turtle Smith Stadium last year, and they did. They pulled it off. So Duke, I'm guessing we'll be able to pull it off too. There's some space there on the sides of the grassy areas. They could bring in extra bleachers, whatever. They bring in extra press facilities. It's not going to be great. It stinks that they've got this AAA ballpark down the road where they play most of their home games, and they have a permanent locker room, and they're not going to be able to use it for regionals. But that's how it works. But anyway, so there we go. Duke, Stanford, Coastal 9.
Yeah, Coastal. Yeah. I would say West Virginia would be right here for me as the Big 12 champ.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Mark, do you agree with that one?
Yeah, West Virginia is in that next group. And then you've got a bunch of ACC teams we need to figure out.
Yeah. And what about UConn? UConn had been here last week at 11. I think they're down a little bit in the RPI.
They are. But they're still in the in the group.
They're just down 4
right now.
Down 4 spots, from last week in the RPI. But I think West Virginia does make the most sense right now. But the fact that they have widened their lead in the Big 12, 33-11 overall, 16 RPI, is a jump from last week of 5 spots. I like where they're at. I mean, you can make a case for them over Coastal even. But I'm fine. I'm fine with going with Coastal.
Yeah, I kind of like Coastal's metrics a little bit better.
Yep.
I mean, West Virginia, they've only played, 4 games total against top 50 RPI teams so far, which is kind of mind-blowing.
That's like a mid-major stat, and Coastal's got a lot more than that, like a power conference stat.
Yeah, 8-7 or 8-6 for Coastal. I mean, Stanford, by the way, 8-4. It's kind of actually pretty comparable to Coastal. And Stanford is 12 spots back in the RPI. Now, we are expecting that gap to shrink, and Stanford to win a power league. So that's why we're making this switch. But I mean, you can make a case either way on that. You really can. Are we still comfortable with that? Stanford over Coastal?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Coastal 9, West Virginia 10. And then, you mentioned there's some ACC candidates here. We've got Virginia, Clemson, BC, back to back in the RPI, and Miami.
Miami there too.
11, 12, 13, 14. Those teams are in the RPI right now. They're all in the mix to host. And you got UConn. What's
your pecking order there?
Yeah, isn't that a great question? I think, boy, it's a great question. So I
had trouble with this.
my gut says Miami would be the first team right now, just because they're 14-10 in the league. They're the fourth out of these four in the RPI, but they're all back to back. They're 14-10 in the league. They have at Pitt and versus Duke. So I think there's a decent path there to get to 18 conference wins. With the RPI where it is, and they've won some good series. I mean, at Louisville just this past weekend, at North Carolina, so they've finally gotten better on the road. They swept Virginia Tech. They took a series from NC State. I mean, they've done some solid things.
Well, and they finished at Pitt, and they have Duke at home to close it out.
Yeah.
So you got to figure they're going to end up with, probably 18 conference wins. Assuming they beat Duke 2 out of 3 is probably a little bit.
Is this thing on? Well, did I just say that?
Let me throw out some original insight. Okay. So with that, remember last year when we had trouble breaking ties and we had people that were really had similar resumes. What did the committee use to break the tie?
Who could say, Mark? I can't remember. They pick something different every year.
Strength of schedule.
There it is.
Look at Clemson's.
Clemson 9 in non-conference. What in the world, really?
That's how I'm breaking the tie until you convince me otherwise.
Well, our nitty gritty says 7 for Clemson and then 24 for Miami.
Right, it's close, but
yeah.
Although another site has Miami at 87 non-conference strength schedule, so I don't know exactly how do you explain that disparity. That's pretty.
Yeah, that's pretty low.
I guess we should use ours.
The math should end up the same. So somebody's off somewhere.
I guess we should use the D1Baseball nitty gritty then for this. Yes, that's interesting. So there's not a huge gap there if you go by that metric on our site.
And those might be the two I would pick.
Yeah.
We'll see how many spaces we have left. Probably not have room for all 4 of them.
Virginia and BC are both 13-11 in the league. Clemson 11-10, but obviously has momentum now, having won 4 straight series. Virginia certainly trending the wrong direction. BC has been kind of up and down. I feel like Miami is the safest pick here, is the one that's kind of has the best record in the league, most favorable schedule, I would say, a manageable schedule, and good momentum.
I'm good with that. I'm good with Miami, and then I would have Clemson, Boston College, and then Virginia as among those 3 as we follow through the ACC pecking order here.
So UVA is down to 4th out of those 4.
They would be just based on momentum.
Yeah, it's gotten rough for them.
And the worst non-conference of the group.
Yep. So they've lost series versus Duke, at Notre Dame, swept, versus Pitt in the last 3 weeks. So that's not a good stretch. And they also, for the last 5 series they've lost. They lost a series at Virginia Tech. They also have a sweep of Miami just wedged in there. So there's that.
Yeah.
And they finish versus Louisville and at Georgia Tech.
Right. So if we go Miami, then you're comparing the other 3 also to Connecticut, to Oregon.
Yes.
To, let's see, is anybody else you want to talk about?
BBU, are they still in this?
BBU would definitely be in that conversation. I mean, we talked about Indiana State last week. I just don't think they've won enough games that matter. They've got a really strong schedule. They just lost too many of those games. They're great, in conference and beating the people they're supposed to beat. And that's going to get you in the field. I just don't think it's going to get you a host.
So Dallas Baptist we kind of have mentioned repeatedly Indiana State is 2-9 top 50, but all of a sudden Dallas Baptist just 1-4 top 50.
Yeah.
I wonder if they must have lost some top 50 games by somebody dropping.
Yeah, because they're 11-3 against 51 to 100. So that's where those games went.
There you go. Somebody dropped. Just scanning through it here, it looks like. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so I mean, does that hold DBU back as well?
Well, it certainly doesn't help them.
Like
Absolutely.
we can't. It kind of makes it hard then
Right.
to make a case for them over
Mhm.
Indiana State.
Yeah, it does. If consistency is what you're looking for.
I mean, they're both dominating their leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana State 16-2, Dallas Baptist 18-3. Those are their conference records. Non-conference strength of schedule 3 for the Sycamores,
Yeah.
79 for DBU using our site. So
Yeah, Indiana State might be ahead of them.
I think so. I think that's what I'm getting at.
So then you look elsewhere, right? So we got those 3 ACC teams left. How do you feel about Oregon? How do you feel about UConn?
I feel pretty good about
Oklahoma
Oregon.
State is suddenly kind of found themselves. I don't know if they're there this week, but they're surging.
Yeah.
And
They would
the
be
other
light
team to
for me
talk
right
about,
now.
yeah, the other team to talk about would be Tennessee. I am not on Tennessee yet until they win a road series. They're 1-8 in SEC road games. So until they do that, I'm not a believer. But if they go to Georgia and have success, then this time next week, we're going to be having the Tennessee talk.
Yep. Definitely buying stock in that one for now.
Yep.
And that being the case, I mean, if we think they're going to win that series, I guess it's still too early to make the move. But they're just 11-10 in the league. But then again, that's the same record as Clemson in its league, by the way. 11-10. I know Clemson has momentum. Tennessee has momentum now too.
They certainly do. They're playing incredible right now.
Clemson 12 in the RPI though, which is pretty good.
Yeah, with the way Tennessee finishes, though, if they win games, RPI won't be an issue.
No, certainly, yeah. So there's Tennessee at Georgia versus Kentucky at South Carolina to finish. Yeah, that'll help.
I kind of like Oregon as our next team here.
Okay. So they're 17-18 in the RPI, 13-8 in the league. Yeah, I think I like it too. It's actually, I mean, you know, if you've got Arizona State and Oregon State who are right there kind of with them in the standings. But the Ducks have the best RPI of that group. It kind of feels like they have the best, you know, overall combination here to be the number 2 team in the Pac-12 pecking order.
Okay. Yeah, and look who they finished with. They get Washington, or they're at USC, who's really scuffling. They're Washington at home, and then Utah.
So although Washington's playing better right now.
Yeah, they're playing well. They're in the bubble mix.
Yep. Probably past USC at this point.
For sure.
But yeah, I think I'm okay with Oregon. I mean, UConn, again, like we kind of knew the RPI was bound to drop some, and here it comes. It's starting. They sweep a couple games at Villanova. Fortunate to have a cancellation in the series finale. That's well done by Mother Nature. And also a nice midweek cancellation against Brown. That's also a big win for UConn because Brown's 10-24. So 2 big wins.
This is that time of year where mutual agreements.
It's really 2 big wins for UConn this week with 2 cancellations.
What was it, A&M last year, who like 2 weeks before the end of the regular season just randomly canceled a game on a clear day?
Well, then Schloss just like came out and said, "Yeah, listen, like, hey, the committee said the RPI matters, so we're going to play the game."
Yeah.
And they got rewarded with the top 8 seed. They were not punished for ducking anybody, you know. I mean,
and I can appreciate the honesty.
Absolutely.
Right? We all know what you're doing. Just go ahead and admit it.
I loved it. And then, frankly, like it exposes the absurdity of the system, the stupidity of the way that we currently do this. But anyway, it's the way we got. So we're going to keep on doing it for now. So yeah, UConn, you still have Seton Hall, who's respectable. You got 3 games against 9-34 Butler. Oof. And then Creighton, who's respectable. So yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out for them. Needs report for Connecticut says no path to the top 8. They need to win 11 out of 16. I'm sorry, 11. I need to win out all 11 games to finish in the top 16. So top 32, they got to win 7 or 8 out of their last 11. So, I mean, like, they're going to probably wind up in the 20s, I think.
I agree. I agree. And that's probably light.
Yeah. Probably. Kendall, what do you come down on this?
Yeah, I mean, I like Oregon in for sure. I think I like Connecticut. I like the fact that Connecticut played a really tough non-conference schedule. It's a northern team who has some constraints that some of these other schools may not have. I mean, you can throw Indiana State in that boat too.
Yeah,
but I like Oregon and Connecticut for sure.
So who would you take Connecticut over Indiana State, even though their RPI is going to probably be 20 points lower, 15 points?
I mean, the problem with Indiana State is if you look at their resume, they played good teams, but didn't win any of the games.
Totally agree.
We all made that point, but I mean, the bottom line is, they're 2-9 top 50, but UConn's only 1-2 top 50. I mean, they've actually got, it's not like they've got a bunch of top 50 wins to hang their hats on. Neither is DBU. And so if you're looking at these three kind of mid-major teams, all of a sudden, I mean, last couple of weeks, we've gone DBU and UConn. Now I'm kind of thinking like maybe Indiana State winds up being in the best position of the three.
Or none of them.
Or none.
Yeah, it could. You just.
I feel like one of those three is going to host, though.
I mean, is it too arbitrary for us to randomly just flip in the Sycamores here after, like, DBU and UConn did nothing to really lose their
their RPI changes. It's we have more information than we had last week, right?
Yeah,
so it's not like we have to follow that same script.
That's true. Looking ahead for Dallas Baptist, let's do it this way. So they just swept Rice this past weekend on the road. Oklahoma at home, Middle Tennessee, who's about a 500 team for 3 games at home. You at UTSA, which is a very good RPI series, and then versus Western Kentucky, who's fine. They're 25-20. That should not crush them. So yeah, I don't know what that does for us with DBU, but there aren't any more top. Well, I guess UTSA currently is a top 50 game that they could add those 3. But they're 48, so that might not hold up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've kind of talked ourselves out of these mid majors, but somebody's got to play their way in.
Yeah.
Okay. So who would that be?
Let's go ahead and put Oregon in at 12. I feel like that's one we all feel okay about.
Yeah, I'm good. I think they're somewhere in the top 16. So yeah, we can do that. So then you're looking at like Oak State. You're looking at, I'm still a week away on Tennessee. I don't know that. Trying to scan. Is there a climber, right? Is there somebody who we feel is going to finish strong, get some RPI love? We talked about Tennessee. That's a possibility. Can
Oregon State get there?
Can Oregon State, East Carolina.
ECU is kind of hanging on there at 28.
They're not even leading the American right now.
Yeah. That's for me, they're still off this map.
Yeah, I agree. And we Indiana had just a terrible weekend, so they fell out of the hosting mix.
Beavers have no way to get to the top 16 in the RPI, but they'll probably finish. Well, I guess they need to finish strong just to finish inside the top 32. They need to win 10 out of 11. So you're probably going to be looking at a team that's going to wind up in the 30s unless they have some timely weather come in and cancel some games against Western Carolina.
Yeah. So unless you win the league, that's a non-starter.
Yep. I think our pool is UConn, Indiana State, DBU. And then the 3 ACC teams, that's Clemson, BC, Virginia, and Oklahoma State and Tennessee. I think that's the pool.
Yeah. I don't see anyone else this week.
Yeah. So where do you go here, Mark? I mean, so let's take another look at I want to take another look at Boston College because this team last week we had them at as our 10 national seed. They did lose 2 out of 3 at home to Clemson. Before that, they swept North Carolina on the road, which is what made the big jump last week. They have been up and down. Other good series wins. They have a sweep. A series win at home against NC State.
They got to go to Wake.
That's this weekend. Feels make or break for them.
Yeah, it won't hurt your RPI, but it's probably going to hurt your win-loss record.
Right. So 13-11 currently. Let's say they find a way to win a game out there in Winston-Salem. Then you're looking at 14-13 heading into a home series win against Notre Dame. Let's say they take 2 out of 3. That's 16-14. Feels like that's not going to quite get it done.
You're going to have to win a couple of games in the conference tournament.
Yeah.
But I mean, so Clemson at 11-10. I mean, I know again the RPI is good now, just like BC's, but 11-10 that leaves you even more work to do to get to really 17 wins is kind of where you want an ACC team, right, to be a host.
Depending on where your RPI is.
Yeah, and they've got Louisville at Virginia Tech, North Carolina. So let's say they go 5-4 in those 3 weekends. That gets them to 16-14 also. So it's like, but you would have momentum, but I don't know. That's also feels kind of fringy.
Virginia as well.
So Virginia currently 13-11 in the league. As we've mentioned, they're kind of trending the wrong way, but now they've got versus Louisville at Georgia Tech to close. So let's say
I kind of think they'll win both of them. Although I mean they've been scuffling so much, it's hard to just assume that. But
right, you would think they'd be favored to win them both.
Yeah,
Louisville at home.
Yeah. They've just lost 4 out of their last 5 series.
Exactly. So yeah,
that's tough. Because I mean, let's say you split those two, then go on a run in the conference tournament. That's still losing, 5 out of your last 6 conference series.
Yeah,
that's not very impressive.
Yeah,
but I do feel like one of these ACT teams is going to host.
Absolutely,
maybe Boston College. Like the committee always likes giving like someone that's deserving, that's in a new spot, giving them a host. And Boston College kind of meets both of those criteria.
So if you're looking for other things between them and Clemson, Clemson just won the head-to-head at BC. However, BC has that 17-7 road record. Clemson 10-5. Okay, fine. And then, of course, as we mentioned, the non-conference strength of schedule 7 for Clemson. Somehow it's 113 for BC, which doesn't really feel right to me. I feel like BC's played the more interesting non-conference schedule, frankly. But whatever. It hasn't worked out that way for them.
I mean, I've stated my tiebreaker is non-conference strength of schedule.
So, do you believe Clemson goes 6-3? In those last 3 weekends, which is again versus Louisville, at Virginia Tech, versus North Carolina?
That's tough, but I wouldn't have thought they won these last few.
You're
right. I'm willing to bet on a team playing well versus like Virginia, who's not. Okay, if we're projecting.
Yeah.
So with BC, as we mentioned, they're all over the place, and there may be room for both of these. Yeah, it's not exclusive. We still have 4 spots left. So, and we're having trouble finding one team. So, I mean, they could both be in there.
You're right. They all do have some warts. Boy, I think it's too early for any of these ACC teams. Let's find somebody else. What about Oklahoma State? 20th now in the RPI, 11-7 in the league. Let's put some tied for second. You got versus Kansas State at Oklahoma are the last 2 conference series. So I like that for them. I think they, I think you probably have a path to 15 and 15-9 in the league.
I think they'll host.
Me too.
At 15-9.
Yeah, me too. So maybe that's the direction here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would give the Big 12 a second team. It's quality league, there's not a lot of difference. It's a lot of parity, I guess we call it this year in that league, but it's certainly strong and deserving of a second team.
All right, let's go.
Go Oak State.
Oklahoma State. Maybe we just slide in.
We have 3 left. Yeah. So it'll be an ACC team, at least one. And then you're looking at
we could
one of
always
those mid majors.
we could always go with more than one of those mid majors, I guess. I mean, they all have RPIs in the teens. None of them have top 50 wins, but they're all dominating their leagues. And so it's all really pretty similar cases here.
Yeah.
If you're looking for some way to separate them, I mean, I don't know what it is. They all have.
I think what it might be, and it probably shouldn't matter, but you would probably have one of the Northeastern teams host UConn or Boston College and send the other there as the two.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's sort of a reward for both. Hey, you can bus there and your fans can go and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe we stick with UConn. Let's say even if their RPI gets into the 20s, maybe they get the benefit of the doubt. You could go UConn, Indiana State, Clemson, or you could throw Tennessee in here.
Yeah, I think we need to see Tennessee win a road series.
Okay, fine with that. I'm also fine sticking with UConn, Indiana, or UConn and DBU. I mean, yes, they're slipping a little bit in RPI.
We could do that. I think UConn, DBU, and Clemson might be my three right here.
Yep, or UConn, DBU, and Indiana State. If we believe Indiana State ultimately, you could just slide them in there at this point.
Well, the other thing too is if DBU is within range, it's a really good geographical area. So it's kind of like, hey, they're in range, that they've earned a top 16. And, oh, by the way, they kind of meet a geographic qualification.
Yeah. It's a whole lot of Texas schools you could send there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my three would be UConn, DBU. Well, I don't know about UConn versus BC. That would be my question there, because I would.
Haven't they played
BC.
this year?
Yeah, they have. They played last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, they played. Have they played multiple midweeks? Let me see here.
BC
UConn.
won 1-1 in mid-April.
Yeah, they split 2.
Oh.
Okay.
I was hoping one of them went 2-0 or something.
Yeah, I'll see the other game in March. Yep.
So, yeah, that is.
I mean, we talked about UConn's RPI is problematic. That's my hesitation there, and it's only going to get worse down the stretch. We're talking in circles here, so let's.
I like Boston College.
I do too. Let's go BC. Let's go BC, and I still think that that DBU and Clemson would be my last two.
DBU, yeah, to me it just feels like maybe that's too many ACC teams. I don't know. Shoot, I'm fine with DBU.
Okay, so if it's not Clemson, then it's who?
Tennessee
or Indiana State, I guess. I mean, again,
that's kind of where we're at.
I think it's too early for Clemson and Tennessee.
Yeah, they're both just 11 and 10 in their leagues. So it feels like they're still just a little trending well.
Mm-hmm.
Both maybe have just a little bit more to do to get there.
Do you want to go Indiana State here?
I think it might make sense at this point, guys. Just that RPI
reward performance and good RPI. They just don't have the wins.
As we pointed out, neither does DBU or UConn. So, News report says Indiana State can stay in the top 16 if they win 9 of their last 12. For what that's worth. So, I think that's doable. I mean, with their remaining schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to go back and do some research and see what's the fewest top 50 wins a host has had, because this would be a candidate.
Yeah, for sure. And DBU, of course, has fewer than Indiana State. They only have 1 at the moment. So Do we do Indiana State and then DBU based, or actually, you know what? I think I like DBU's path a little better. They have some more good games ahead. So let's do that. Let's do DBU Indiana State. I think Indiana State's a good compromise choice at this point. I mean, unless you just want to stick with UConn and say, hey, well, but we know their RPI is going to drop. They're going to be in the 20s. I think Indiana State has a better path to finish in the teens, and they're all three of them dominating the league. So let's just do that.
Okay. What I think is going to happen is one of the ACC teams or Tennessee is going to emerge and squeeze them out. But
me too.
I don't know who that is, and right now it's kind of tough to project it.
I agree. Right now it feels. It's just all these teams are just as you can tell. The fact we've talked in circles for the last 20 minutes. It's just hard to separate. So let's do that. So that's Coastal 9, West Virginia 10, Miami 11, Oregon 12, Oklahoma State 13, BC 14, DBU 15, Indiana State 16. And as you can tell, we've got a lot of conviction in these teams at the bottom. We're already behind schedule. Let's plow forward here into part 2. This is our conference by conference look at the at-large situation and the automatic qualifier situation. So we will start, as always, if I can get myself prepared, we will start in the America East. Where I believe the choice remains the Fighting Maine Black Bears, who are 13-2 in conference. On to the American, where I still like projecting East Carolina as the automatic qualifier, even though they're technically a game behind Wichita State and Houston, both of whom they've lost series against, which is interesting. But I still have the most faith in the Pirates, and I think projecting this as a one-bid league makes sense.
Yeah. I agree.
Atlantic 10. Davidson would remain the choice. They're 10-4 in the league, a half game up on the Billikens right now. ACC, we already have Wake Forest, Duke, and Miami in as hosts, as well as Boston College. Virginia dropping out of a host position. Boy, they had been sitting pretty for quite a while, but so then you've got Virginia still in, Clemson obviously in. Let's see, where are we?
Notre Dame.
Thank you.
Louisville, yeah.
Louisville. Notre Dame is 13-11 with a 40 RPI. I like that conference record. Louisville just 9-12 in the league, but has a 26 RPI. They should be okay. North Carolina would be back in for me this week after taking that series at Virginia Tech. They're now 11-11 in the league with a 36 RPI. And then I think I would probably drop out
Virginia Tech
to the Hokies. Yeah. What about NC State? I think they're probably okay still with a 24 RPI.
My question would be what makes Louisville definitely in and NC State definitely out?
No, I'm saying NC State in.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, they're very comparable.
They're very comparable, yes. NC State has at Notre Dame, at North Carolina versus Pitt. I think they need to win at least 2 out of those last 3. They're currently 8-12. They're currently 8-12, so you need to probably get to 13 wins at minimum, and probably need more than that. It does actually get a little dicey. Louisville has at Clemson, at Virginia versus Florida State, so I don't love that for them either. Don't love that for them either.
Yeah.
Neither path is a slam dunk. But I think right now
it's kind of one of those where the tournament's going to matter.
Yeah, you're right. It is. Get your tickets now at the Durham Bulls Athletic Park, the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
All right, so UNC in, Virginia Tech out, and we'll leave these teams, NC State and Louisville, on the bubble. North Carolina, I guess, is in better shape now than.
I think they're in.
Yeah, they're now in better.
They're not on the
shape.
bubble anymore.
Yeah, better coming from out to in, skipping the bubble altogether.
Probably a 2 seed.
Yeah, just based on this past week, it shows you how much things can change. So UNC in, Virginia Tech out. Hokies not done, by the way. 11-12 with a 51 RPI. they can still get back in here. I mean, again, we kind of feel like 14 wins feels like generally the benchmark for an ACC team in conference.
If the RPI is there.
Yes.
It's 51 right now. So if it's
Yep.
51 on selection day, you're not getting in.
No, for sure. They do have 3 games at Wake Forest to close, which, hey, opportunity there, opportunity to really make some hay, but not easy. So we'll move on. ASUN.
Yeah, no change.
No change. Florida Gulf Coast, 16-5, 62 RPI, almost back, kind of hanging around in that at large. They're probably not going to get there just because there's nobody else in the league that's really going to help them in the RPI. But they're not totally out of the at large range if they don't get the automatic. Big 12. So we've got West Virginia, Oklahoma State in.
Texas.
Texas is in with a 30 RPI and a 10-8 league record, and then it gets very interesting.
It's weird.
So TCU's out this week.
Yeah, I would agree.
They've just really in trouble, and now they're down to 8-10 in the league with a 56 RPI, not trending the right way. Kansas State, I would probably put back in now.
I would put them ahead. Yeah, they would be the next team. Texas
Tech are
61.
Not loving it. 9-9 in the league with a 61 RPI. I mean, it feels like we keep giving them the benefit of the doubt. The metrics don't add up. It's not working, guys. I mean, you got to win that series at Kansas State. That was a big weekend for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at best, they're on the bubble.
At best, they're on the bubble. Kendall, where do you come down on the Red Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, they would certainly be on the extreme bubble. I mean, the problem you run into with Texas Tech is, like, Kansas State's certainly ahead of them. I mean, any other team that we would talk about in this mix, if they had a 61 RPI losing record against top 50, and they were 500 in conference, if that name wasn't Texas Tech and it was Notre Dame, like, there's no way they're getting in.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they don't belong in the worksheet right now, guys.
Okay.
And we had them on here kind of assuming that they would find a way to win that series at Manhattan, and they did not. And so I think they're out.
I would still keep them on there just in case. Because who knows? Maybe it's a really small field this week.
Like, I mean, right now, they be behind Louisville and NC State? I think so. I mean, those teams are in much better RPI shape. Those teams are the 20s.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, and sorry, I was responding to email, so if you mentioned this, my apologies, but Kansas State's a full 2 games ahead of Texas Tech in the standings.
Yeah, Kansas State's definitely ahead of Texas Tech. No question. Yeah. No question. In fact, I won't take Kansas State off the bubble, off the yellow, just because the RPI is still 57.
Yeah.
But they're in pretty good shape as the 4th team in the pecking order in that league.
Yeah, I mean, and their remaining schedule's solid. I mean, they go out of conference. They have TCU at home. At Oklahoma State's going to be really interesting. That's a big series for both of those teams.
Yeah.
Because Kansas State, if you can win, I think if you can win one and not just totally peter out in the Big 12 tournament, I think you're definitely in. And for Oklahoma State, that's a series I think if you win that, you're probably in pretty good shape to host.
Yeah, it's yours to lose at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that's it for now in this league. I mean, the Sooners are scratching and clawing to get back into it. Still have work to do, obviously. 9-9 in the league, 59 RPI with just 24-20 overall. But I mean, really, that profile isn't that different from Texas Tech. I mean, they're both 9-9. RPIs are 2 spots apart, right?
Yeah.
So
it's come. They're coming, right?
Yeah. Big East. We'll stick with UConn here and keep it a 1-bid league. Although Creighton currently the leader, 9-3. So keep an eye on them as a potential bid stealer if they can win the conference tournament, but not an at-large team with a 99 RPI. Big South is Campbell.
Yeah.
No change here. 16-2, 37 RPI. So that is a team that would get in that large if they don't win the league. Although, boy, that RPI keeps on slipping. It's a little dicey. Big Ten. So last week our automatic qualifier was, did we switch to Maryland last week or was it?
It was still Indiana.
It was. So we can make that change.
Yeah.
Indiana replaces Maryland as the AQ, but they're both still in.
Mm-hmm. Probably still have Iowa in too.
Yeah, for sure.
I
still like what they did in non-conference. Like they went out and played pretty good teams. 38.
I agree with you guys. I would have them in, but the fact that they're tied for 6th in the league at 8-6. I guess maybe they're
Yeah, but I mean, look at the difference between
It's
6 and
points.
1.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's tight.
they're a half game out of third.
Good point. They play fewer games than Indiana,
Yeah.
Nebraska, Michigan. If they
Well, let's look at the remaining schedule just for do our due diligence. Ohio State at home, Michigan State at home, which Michigan State's had a really nice season. Jake Boss has done a great job this year, 28-13. And then at Northwestern. I mean, I kind of feel like they win all 3 of those series.
Yeah.
If they do that, they're definitely in.
Yeah. Michigan State is the other team that I would actually talk about here is 4th in my pecking order in this conference, ahead of Rutgers now. Now, I don't think I'm ready to put them in yet, but 10-5 in the league with a 66 RPI. I mean, they need to get that RPI up, but you've got opportunity here. You've got on the road at Illinois, who's below 500, but at least it's a road series. You've got on the road at Iowa and then versus Indiana. I mean, there's opportunity to get. I mean, if they were to win 10 of the last 11, the news report says they could actually jump into the top 45. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, everything's good about them except their non-conference, which is why their RPI is where it is.
Yeah. So we'll leave them off for now, but keep them on your radar as we move on to the big. There's nobody else. I mean, Rutgers at this point, I think, is in trouble with an 8-7 league record.
Yeah.
I mean, even though the RPI is in range at 54. But yeah, let's move on to the Big West. Fullerton, of course, still on track for that automatic qualifier with a 2.5 game lead. As you recall, the automatic bid goes to the regular season champion here. There's no conference tournament. So Fullerton in great shape, 2.5 games ahead of Santa Barbara. Still a 2-bid league. Irvine is kind of hovering 10-8 in conference. And it's tied for 5th place with Hawaii, 45 RPI. I think it's still light, but I don't know. I mean, it's worth a look.
They're definitely within striking distance.
Yeah. Series loss at home to Kansas State last weekend hurts because that's another bubble team.
Yeah.
Could be a direct competitor for a bid, They also have a series loss at home to Fullerton, a series loss at home to Long Beach, a series loss at Cal Poly. So, I mean, they really haven't played well in a while, but they do have a sweep on the road against Arizona State early.
Yeah.
So that's something. And a road series win at USC. So, I mean, they've done some things. It's a weird resume.
Yeah, I mean, the only bad thing for UC Irvine as well, if you look at the last 2 weekends, they play RPI 207 and RPI 258.
Oh, boy.
The margin for error there is literally 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not great. I think they're out for now. We'll leave them off. But, I mean, heck, they might be in similar position to Texas Tech right now. I don't know that, I mean, Irvine's 7-3 against top 50. That's something. I think that compares favorably with Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech is 5-7. So, doesn't mind. I mean, Irvine's 20 spots ahead of 15 spots ahead of Texas Tech in the RPI. I mean, actually has a winning record in their league instead of 500.
Yeah.
I don't know. Colonial guys, we've got UNCW, which we had for some reason we had made our automatic qualifier last week. I don't know why we didn't go to Northeastern. That feels like
Northeastern should be.
Yeah,
they should be the auto.
So, assuming that's the case, that bumps Wilmington out because they don't have an at-large.
They do have Northeastern at home this week.
Yes, they do, but they're still not going to get to at-large range in the RPI. They're currently 74.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel like it makes sense to me to project Wilmington over. I mean, Northeastern's in our top 25, and they're in first place in their league. I mean, why wouldn't we? And there's a conference tournament. It's not like it goes to the the regular season champ.
Yeah. So then you got Conference USA, and that's
is Elon, by the way. Sorry, is Elon worth talking about now? Again, they are 15-8 in conference, 53 RPI, 6-5 top 50. So I mean, they rebounded a little bit with a big series win at Charleston this past weekend. That was huge for them, and midweek win against Campbell.
If you're going to get in and from a league, like that, it's got to be top 35 or so RPI, maybe 40.
Yeah, and winning your regular season title too is something that really helps. And they're 2 games back in Northeastern, so you're right. Probably not going to happen. Conference USA, DBU and UTSA remain. I mean, are we still okay with UTSA has fallen in the RPI? They're down to 48, but I think they're fine.
Yeah.
What's your take there, Mark?
Well, it's how will they finish? Because again, it's a similar profile to what we just talked about with Elon. If you're not going to win your league, you're going to have an RPI around 50. That's problematic.
Yeah. They've got.
Yeah, I mean, I like how they finished though. I mean, they have Rice at home, DBU at home, at La Tech, who has scuffled this year.
But is that going to help the RPI?
Yeah,
is kind of the question.
That is the question. So, Needs report says they can win 8 of their last 11 to get in the top, to finish in the top 45, and they actually even have a path to the top 32 if they win 10 of their last 11. So it kind of feels like the RPI is going to go up a little bit, largely probably thanks to those games against DBU and the fact that they've got 4 road games left.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean they're on the bubble because of the RPI where it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're ahead of some other bubble teams for me. Okay, we've got the Horizon, the Wright State Athletic League.
Yeah.
I like the Raiders here, guys.
Yeah, but how about the Fight North? They're 15-6 as well.
They are.
So in the Ivy, which is next, Columbia was swept by Harvard last weekend. And Columbia was our projected winner.
Yeah.
You could go Penn, you could go Harvard. You stay with Columbia. You know, it's
Penn and Harvard now tied for first at 13-5.
Yep.
Harvard has the head-to-head series win at Penn.
Okay.
So I kind of like the Crimson.
Yeah, hard to argue with that.
So that's a change. Harvard replaces Columbia. On to Mark's favorite part of the show, the MAC.
Never gets old.
It doesn't, does it? It really doesn't. So we've been riding the Bronx for a while here now, but now they're in second place behind the Golden Griffins of Canisius. Yeah. Let's see here. Obviously, it's gonna be a one bid league. I'm trying to see if they've played yet. My internet is struggling right now. Oh my gosh. Ryder lost the game at St. Peter's this weekend.
Peacocks.
I didn't see that in Digest. I'm surprised. That's a big update. Hey, listen, hat tip to the Peacocks. 6-35 this year. They're having a nice year. They've actually won. They've won half dozen games. Yeah. That's good.
LSU good North.
That's right.
You're on mute, Kendall.
Ryder does still have a head-to-head series win against Canisius. It was at home. Yeah. Canisius is, again, as we said, a game up in the state. I think I'm fine sticking with Ryder, guys, but I mean,
I am too.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Let's go to the Mid-American Conference. We've gone with the Chippewas last week. They are now 1 game behind in the standings. So they took 2 out of 3 from Miami, Ohio this weekend. But Kent State moves back into first place. But the Chippewas have a series win against Kent State. I still, and also I think there was somebody else that Central Michigan had beaten head to head. Ball State they swept. So I like Central Michigan.
Okay.
All right, on to the Missouri Valley. As we mentioned, it's Indiana State, and it's a 1 bid league.
Yep.
Missouri State is the number 2 in the pecking order, 14-4, 2 games out of first, but 79 RPI. So, but actually, I've wound up having a pretty nice little year. Mountain West, we had San Jose State. Now, San Jose State had a bad weekend.
They did. Air Force swept them. So you could go with Air Force, or you go with San Diego State, or you could stick with San Jose. It's kind of a
boy. Oh boy.
What do you think?
Air Force. This is wild. So San Diego State is in first place with an 18-22 overall record. 4 games under 500 overall. Air Force, a half game back, is 3 games under 500 overall, and San Jose State is 500. So this league is not having a good year.
I'd go with San Diego State since they have San Jose at home this weekend.
They also have a head-to-head series win against Air Force. San Diego State does. So
yeah,
I'm fine making that change.
Mm-hmm.
So San Diego State replaces San Jose. Okay. To the Northeast Conference, of course, the Blue Devils keep on rolling here, 20-4. They're 25-9 overall. Central Connecticut remains the pick. Four games ahead of the Knights of Fairleigh Dickinson.
Pretty good.
Who, by the way, shout out to Fairleigh Dickinson's second baseman, who is apparently 5'4", I'm told. Mr. Shotgun Spratling tells me, and therefore should be on the all fit.
Why are you biased towards little people?
I mean, listen, it just is what it is. They're the best. Let's keep it rolling. Let's see. Ohio Valley Conference. We had SEMO, and that remains the pick at 14-4, 2.5 games up on Morehead State in the standings.
Yep.
Pac-12. Stanford and Oregon already in as hosts. Last week we also had, obviously Oregon State and Arizona State are all in. Last week we had USC in. Now we've got USC probably out after getting swept.
Yeah.
And Washington in.
Well, not necessarily.
Or at least on the board.
At least on the board.
Yeah. Although I will say Washington has head-to-heads over USC and over UCLA.
Yeah. And UCLA also not, they're on the bubble now too.
I would definitely have Washington ahead of UCLA in my pecking order.
Would you?
Well, I mean, Washington's ahead of them in the division or in the conference. They have the head-to-head on the road.
Yeah.
The RPI, they're higher in the RPI, 52 versus 35, but they're comparable, top 50, rankings against RPI top 50. So I think the conference standing and the head-to-head has to account for something.
Yeah.
Especially on the road.
I mean,
I agree with that.
UCLA, their only conference series wins since mid-March is against Utah. I mean,
boy,
1-5.
It's really
series.
And last week, you get a respite. You get UC Davis, and they don't even sweep it. They lose a game on Sunday to Davis, a team that's 14-25. I mean, it just feels like they can't get out of their own way right now. And boy, they had Stanford. They had that series won. They're up in the 8th, not quite won. It was still hanging the balance. They were up a run in the 8th inning Sunday in the rubber game, and they give up a grand slam and lose. And it's just they've got Cal left and Oregon State at home, both those series at home, and then at Arizona State. I mean, they just need to win some series, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think I agree with your points, though. Washington probably ahead of UCLA now in the pecking order.
I would still have UCLA right on the bubble, though. For discussion. So, they're right there with Washington. I mean, it's the margins are razor thin between those two teams, and they actually have a much higher RPI. So,
yeah, much stronger. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So those right now that gives us 6 still in the Pac-12. We would swap in Washington for USC.
Yep.
And we'll come back to whether we might have room for them because it looks like our bubble is it a soft bubble? I think it's a soft bubble.
So far, I mean, we got Texas Tech in.
Yep.
Right now.
Patriot League remains Army 18-3. Their big winning streak has been snapped. Didn't they have a big winning streak going? They won a bunch.
Yeah, they were I think they had won I want to say 11 or 12 straight at one point.
Yeah, they had a nice streak.
It's going. A lot. It's a lot of W's on this board. I'm not going to count them all up.
Yeah, they lost a game to Columbia on Tuesday to snap the streak, and then anyway, it's Army.
The SEC.
Here we go. Southeastern Conference. So we've already got LSU in no particular order. LSU, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Florida as hosts. And I'm forgetting somebody. Arkansas, yeah. I'm going to get hate mail for that one.
Don't forget
second.
them.
That one split second when I forgot to mention Arkansas. I'm going to get 6 angry tweets. So that's 5 that are already in. Tennessee is in. Is 6.
Kentucky's in.
Kentucky's certainly in. Obviously, Kentucky trending the wrong way, but they just started from such a position of strength, and they're still 4 in the RPI with an 11-10 record in the league.
And then you've got 4 teams that are on the bubble. You have A&M, you have Alabama, you have Auburn, and you have Georgia.
Yep.
So both Alabama and A&M were ahead in the standings and got swept in tough road environments last week.
So now those teams are both 9-12 along with Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say that I would have Georgia at the back end of all these teams. So here's what I'm thinking. You look at Georgia. They lost a series at Auburn. They still have Tennessee this weekend in Athens, at Missouri, which Missouri's not great, but like they're tough at home, right? Like they're good, they're decent at home, and they have LSU. Like I don't like their chances with that remaining schedule.
Yeah. I mean, Georgia is a team that could get in with 13, but I don't know that they're going to get to 13 wins.
Yeah,
I mean, they have 8 now.
They're going to need to win a couple in Hoover.
And I don't love the fact that they're only 24-20 overall either.
And here's the deal. So if you're going to get in with 12 wins in the SEC, okay, which is only happened a couple of times, and only one time recently, that was a couple of years ago when Alabama did it. It's when you finish, say, 9th in the league. It's not when you finish 11th or 12th. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So it's when you're looking to fill a league pick. Okay, but if you're 13, then and you have an RPI that's in the 20s where Georgia will probably be, then that's a little bit different story. Okay, so I don't like Georgia's chances right now. Of course, I didn't like them, and then they swept Arkansas, and they got right back in the mix. So that's what they're going to have to do, right? Because they've got Tennessee coming in this weekend, and of course, the LSU series at the end. Those are really tough, but they're at home. So really, the path for Georgia is to go to Missouri and sweep, and then not get swept in the other two. I think that's the path. I don't know that they can do that, but if they're going to get in, that's what they have to do.
Yeah, and I'm skeptical, certainly.
Yeah.
So how do you line up the others? Alabama, Auburn, A&M right now. Alabama has the best RPI at 22, Auburn 34, A&M 43. Alabama and Auburn played head-to-head, and Alabama took 2 out of 3, but it was at home. Mm-hmm. Have they played?
Alabama
A&M
goes
yet?
to A&M week after, or next weekend. So
Alabama's got versus Vandy at A&M versus Ole Miss. I think
Alabama is going to find their way in. I think they're going to get to 13 wins, and with that RPI, they got a shot. A&M, their RPI is not in great shape right now. They may need to get to 14, and they may do it, but they're just so I would probably and Auburn is kind of in between. Okay,
yeah.
Auburn's schedule is easier down the stretch because they have Ole Miss and Missouri. Okay, so I would probably is most likely to least likely. I'd probably go Alabama, Auburn, A&M.
I think I'm with you there.
I think they're all going to get in, but that would be the order I would have them. And Georgia would be 4th. And Georgia has a path, as we discussed. It's
a difficult path.
Yeah.
But I mean, are they in better shape than? Well, we'll get to it, I guess. Texas Tech, I was going to say, is the other team that feels like they shouldn't be in the field right now. But,
well, the one thing I will say with the pecking order of A&M and Auburn is the fact that A&M has a head-to-head series win in Auburn.
Auburn, yeah, that's true. But that matters. It's just, will it matter as much as the RPI?
Yeah.
Yep.
History would suggest probably not.
Right. Okay. Well, for now, I think we'll probably have them both in this week. We have a soft bubble, as we talked about, and Georgia would be on the edge right now. So with Texas Tech, probably. Let's move on to the SoCon, where Wofford has been our pick. Did they lose their series this weekend? No, they didn't. They won it. Oh, they didn't play a series. They had out of conference game against Wake Forest, and a home win against High Point. But anyway, so they're a half game out of first. But you got I stick with the Terriers here, and it's a 1-bid league.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Mercer and Sanford both tied at 10-5, though. By the way, Wofford hosts Mercer. It's going to come down to the conference tournament.
It is.
Even though Wofford, I mean, technically with a 46 RPI and 32 and 11 overall, it's like, they could be in at large. They didn't get in last year. They're not going to get in this year. And that stinks for them, but that's the reality.
Yep.
The Southland, we had gone back to Nichols last week.
Yeah.
Before that, we had Incarnate Word. They're still kind of bunched here at the top of the standings. I think Incarnate Word's technically back ahead after Nichols lost 2 out of 3 at Northwestern State. Incarnate Word, meanwhile, won 2 out of 3 against McNeese. They both lost their series at Northwestern State. So, the demon's coming on here.
Yeah, if you can make sense of this league, more power to you.
Yeah, I agree. Kendall, this is your beat. What do you got here?
Give me Incarnate Word.
Make that change again. We're going to change
All
it
right.
back.
Let's go.
Okay. Incarnate Word. Nichols. On to the SWAC.
No change.
SWAC? No change. Alabama State. Now 3 games up on Florida A&M. They had been tied. They're not tied any longer, as the Hornets swept the Rattlers this past weekend. So there you go. Clarity. Love clarity, guys.
Yeah.
Summit League. Oral Roberts is 17-1.
Yep.
Partying like it's the Mid-Con, circa
5.5 games
1998.
up in first place.
Yeah, running away with it. 84 RPI, still light for at large, but not so far out. But they're not going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Sun Belt guys, we've got Coastal in already as a host.
Yeah. Southern Miss would be in.
Southern Miss is in comfortably with 25 RPI and 14-7 in the league, and then you've got Troy and Texas State in the mix.
Yeah, Troy lost the series, South Alabama this weekend, and then you got Texas State that you need to consider as well.
Yeah, so Texas State won a huge series this weekend at Old Dominion, so they kind of probably the dagger for Old Dominion there. Texas State is now 12-9 in the league with a 49 RPI. I mean, right now it still feels light.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know the Sun Belt's a better league than some of these other ones we were talking about, where we're saying, hey, you got to win your league and or be in the 30s, but still, it's not that much better. I mean, I don't think a Sun Belt team with a 49 RPI, finishing tied in 4th place, let's say in the standings, I don't think you're going to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Troy at 11-10, even though their RPI is in good shape at 33, I don't love that. 11-10 in the league, tied for 6th.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So those two both make me nervous, but we've got a soft bubble. What's your pecking order on those two? I mean, Troy has the head-to-head and the better RPI.
It would be Troy this week.
Yeah, I agree. Only 1 game behind Texas State in the standings too. So West Coast Conference will remain the LMU Lions, 15-6, 2 games ahead of Portland, USD, and Gonzaga in the standings. And in the WAC, we've got Sam Houston, still the pick, 18-6 in the league. Lopes just kind of hanging around there, 14-7. Watch out for the Lopes in the conference tournament. So that gives us 66 teams for 64 spots.
Yeah.
I think we all agree that Georgia and Texas Tech are vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say Troy and Texas State.
Yeah, I think those would be the ones to discuss.
Yeah. So, Kendall, we need to trim 2.
It's a tough call. I kind of feel like the Sun Belt's not going to get the benefit of the doubt against some of these other conferences.
4 does not. I just don't see it. I say we cut Texas State.
Yeah, for now, for sure. And then now for me, I'm actually going to deviate away from Texas Tech on this one. I'm going to say we're going to need to trim off one of these ACC or one of these SEC teams.
Georgia for me.
Georgia.
I think the fact that Kansas State and Texas Tech are so close is that kind of gives the committee cover to put in a team that's probably going to rank pretty well with the advisory committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just
kind of gives them a little cover.
I just worry about the fact that, again, I mean, replace the name on their jersey with a different name, and it's like, what about their resume says, hey, this is an at-large team?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing.
Well, I mean, this was a team that until this week everybody thought was a top 25 team. So, I mean, it could be one of those things where, like, they just kind of view that as well. The metrics are just off on this team in general.
Yeah,
could be.
So Mark, is that
which
what
is
you
where
come
the
down to?
advisory committee comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to get an 11th SEC team, it's got to be a more of a slam dunk than what Georgia's going to be. You know,
Yeah.
we're projecting them to maybe get 12 wins, and even that may be tough.
Yep.
I think that's light.
I agree with you. So that wasn't that hard, not that painful. Texas State and Georgia are out. So our last four in then would be Texas Tech, Troy, one of these ACC teams,
NC
Louisville
State.
or NC State, probably NC State.
Yeah.
Then NC State has a head-to-head over Louisville, right?
Maybe UTSA.
Yes, NC State does have the head over Louisville.
Yeah. So I might have Louisville behind them.
I mean, Louisville, what is it? Their record in
Conference
ACC series.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Let's see. They won a series against Georgia Tech, but other than that, lost 2 out of 3 at Notre Dame, lost 2 out of 3 to NC State. They did win a sweep Boston College. They've got 2 series wins in conference. I think they're 2-5 in conference series. But then again, I mean, is NC State much different than that? I don't think so.
Yeah, NC State.
1, 2, 3, 4. Also 2-5. It's not great.
So look at the sheet, Aaron.
Yeah, we still have UNC Wilmington on the Colonial. So
Aha.
we need to add back Texas State probably.
Good catch.
I would add Texas State back before I put Georgia on there, considering how close they are with Troy. Kind of the same thing, you know. The RPI is a little different between Troy and Texas State, but for me, it's kind of the same thing as like Kansas State and Tech in the Big 12. Like I feel like the margin between those two clubs in the Sun Belt is pretty small.
Yeah. What about?
Is there someone else that would be
Right,
the other thing to think about? Let me
Like
just take a quick peek.
Michigan
here.
State we discussed. I think probably still a little like Irvine,
Michigan State. Someone else.
I think if Michigan State takes that series against Iowa in a couple weeks, they could put themselves in.
I mean,
but they also might be taking Iowa's spot.
Right. You've got Elon, as we talked about, with that 53 RPI, 6-5 top 50, 15-8 in the league. I mean, there's some metrics there. Like, how is their case worse than Texas State's?
I mean, it's really not. I mean, Sunbelt's a little bit tougher, I think, but it's not a huge disparity.
Yeah, I don't. Where is let's see the conference ranking here. So Sunbelt is number 5, CAA is 8. And we're talking about the 4th team in the Sunbelt versus the 2nd team in the CAA.
Mm-hmm.
Other metrics here.
Yeah, I'm just kind of going through looking at if there's someone we're missing that we like more than Texas State.
I mean, I think Elon would be the answer for me. I don't love Elon's chances, but I think I like it more than Texas State's. I mean, the fact that they're, again, 15-8 in their league instead of 12-9 in the Sun Belt. I mean, well, boy, but Elon has been struggling over the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm. And let's see how Elon finishes.
Elon does have a midweek win against Wake. They have a midweek win against Campbell. Midweek win at NC State. They have a series win against Northeastern.
Yeah, they're going to go on a run here at the end because their schedule is pretty soft. Other than a midweek at Campbell.
And they also opened the season with a win against Kentucky. They lost that series, but they did win a game against Kentucky too.
Yeah, their RPI is going to plummet though.
Yeah, so needs report. That's right, because Kendall had pointed that out before. The needs report says they need to win out to finish in the top 45. They got 10 games left, so they're probably going to finish in the 50s or 60s realistically, which is a problem.
And with Texas State, they
gotta win.
they're going to win games, I think, but I mean the RPI is probably going to hold about where it is.
They got to win 10 out of their last 11 to finish in the top 45. So they're probably also going to be in the 50s, thereabouts. So I don't love that. I just don't love their chances. I mean, there's got to be somebody else, but I mean, maybe it's Irvine. I mean, again, I go back to that just because they're at least they're 45 in the RPI. 5 top. I mean, I like a team that has a winning record against top 50. They've played a decent amount of games.
I mean, I'd almost go back to Michigan State. At least they're winning games.
I mean, the only thing I'll say about Georgia, just to kind of throw Georgia back in this pile, is they do have a non-conference series win over Georgia Tech. They swept Georgia Southern.
Those teams aren't good though this year.
Yeah, I mean they're average at best.
They're not even close.
Beat Wofford. Beat Clemson. They split with Clemson midweek. So, I mean, there's a little bit of meat on the bone.
They have the Arkansas sweep.
The Arkansas sweep, that's definitely it. That and they won the series with Kentucky. And they played Florida off their feet. I mean, they could have easily won that series in Gainesville.
I mean, maybe it is Georgia.
It's what do you value? Are they... Do you feel like it's the best team or the most deserving?
I'm not sure that they're either one of those things, but they're 11-13 top 50. Irvine is 7-3 top 50. I mean, Irvine and Elon again. Both the fact that they've, their RPIs are okay, although Elon's we expect won't be. Irvine's I think will probably hold roughly where it is based on the needs report and the remaining schedule. 7-3 top 50. I mean, again, it's been up and down. 10-8 in the league isn't great, but it's also not, dead.
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes down to Irvine or Georgia for me. It sounds like nobody else is a believer in Irvine, so we could go with Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at Georgia, I mean, they've just got to not get swept in these home series with Tennessee and LSU and make some noise at Missouri, which, Alabama swept at Missouri. Missouri is 2-13 in their last 5 weekends?
Struggling.
So that's certainly possible.
All right, let's go. Let's make a decision. We'll go Georgia. There's a path here.
Yeah, I don't feel great about Georgia.
Well, I don't feel great about any of these. Yeah. So
and realistically,
Georgia at least has
stolen bids are going to take care of this.
But. Right. We're going to have our bubble's going to shrink. We're going to have some stolen bids. These teams mostly aren't going to get in. But for now, as of today,
let's be honest, you don't really matter. But we're just having you in for now.
That's it.
Your placeholder.
Stolen
bid placeholder.
I was talking. It's kind of funny. I was talking to Jay Johnson the other day about, we were just talking about the postseason picture, and he goes, "Man, I remember being at Arizona. Remember that year Arizona was like red hot at the end of the year, but like they were so bad early in the season, and they were hoping they would squeeze in." And he was like, just sitting there watching like all these upsets and conference tournaments. He was like, it was almost like nauseating to see like all the stolen bids happen in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens every year.
All right, so Georgia stays in. That's not an addition. Changes from last week. Virginia Tech, TCU, USC, and the second team, Wilmington. Right, the second team in the Colonial Athletic Conference. Those are our 4 dropouts. As we just kind of swapped the automatic qualifier there in the CAA back to what it should have been, really. And then in the additions, North Carolina, Washington, Auburn, and Kansas State.
Yep.
We also had a few automatic qualifier changes. Indiana replaces Maryland replaces Indiana. Northeastern replaces UNCW, as I mentioned, Harvard replaces Columbia, San Diego State replaces San Jose State, and Incarnate Word replaces Nichols. So that's it for this week. I feel like, frankly, guys, this was a disappointing performance by you guys.
It was hard.
This was an agonizing Nerdcast. I feel like none of us were decisive.
So
I'm not impressed. I'm giving the show a C.
Well, I do want to apologize for myself. There was a moment in the middle of this pod where people were unable to sign up for a subscription, so that's a little bit of an issue.
Doesn't matter.
And so I was multitasking for a little bit.
I mean,
that's kind of important.
It's somewhat important.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, now, though, as you listen to this pod, you can sign up for D1Baseball subscription.
Yeah.
Use the code Kendall.
Say 30, you get 30% off an annual subscription, or you can use Nerdmaster General and get 150% over the price of a regular subscription.
And it all goes to me.
Don't use that one. That's it, guys. I'm going to spare our listeners of any final thoughts here. We've gone on long enough. It's been brutal, but we made it. We'll
do better next week.
We'll do better next week, I promise you. Until then, thanks for listening. So long.